Bucky Irving is officially a top 10 running back in Dynasty leagues. We'll tell you if you should continue to buy on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course, Matt Williamson is here. You can follow him on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. On today's show, we are taking a look at the latest batch of Dynasty ADP, courtesy of Dynasty League Football. And Matt, the single player that gained the most value over the last month is Bucky Irving, who is now a top 8 Dynasty running back. Going into last month, he was being drafted at 82 overall. Now he's up to 34 overall. Are you buying Bucky Irving as a top 8 Dynasty running back?
I don't think it's crazy. I mean, young running backs in good situations should go up the board very, very quickly. You know, I mean, we know how this position works. It's volatile. It's not for long. So I went over to Dynasty League Football and just pulled up their running back ranks so I don't miss anyone. And I think he's right in the neighborhood for me with Chase Brown, Tyrone Tracy. You know, I think those are similar, comps for him. And if that's right around 8 to 12, I can live with it because I think the Bucs offensive line is probably a top 3 unit and isn't getting worse anytime soon. And to me, running back situation means more than talent. And I like his talent.
Kate, what do you think?
I'm going to take it a step further. I would much prefer Bucky Irving over guys like Chase, like Tyrone Tracy, who are also climbing up the draft boards. I think looking at a situation, looking at talent, we've talked about the incoming draft class, which is very deep at running back. And looking at the teams that I think could be in the market, I think most teams are going to be in the running back market, even if it's just for depth. Marcus, I know you guys are probably going all in on Ashton Jeanty round 1. But yeah, even people that, feel pretty good about their running back situation are probably going to dip their toes into this pool. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are one of those teams that I just I don't think they have a need. I don't think that this is going to be a situation that they pursue aggressively. And that being said, I think out of, all of these kind of mid-range running backs that don't have maybe significant financial commitments from, their respective organization, maybe don't have, significant draft capital, Bucky Irving is like the one dude I feel really, really good about because, I mean, not only has he been crazy efficient this year, he's looked 10 times the part of Rachaad White that we've seen in all of his years as the starting running back for the Tampa Bay Bucks. He's always been efficient. And I think seeing a running back come in and be able to produce, in a more efficient way than we've ever seen Rachaad White do it says something for me. And Bucky Irving, I think, has a chance to be this team's starter moving forward. Top 10 feels really aggressive, but when I'm looking at other running backs in that range, I'm kind of thinking yeah, I guess I probably would prefer Bucky Irving over most of them.
Well, and Matt, for me, I was looking at some of the running backs even going ahead of him, like Chase Brown and Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. Talent-wise, I think you and I are both in agreement. Breece Hall is just a way more talented player.
He's a better football player.
Yeah, he is a better football player. But I like Bucky Irving's situation a lot better. I like Bucky Irving's health a lot better than Breece Hall. And what's that Jets team look like in 2025 when Breece Hall is going into the final year of his contract? I think I would still prefer Breece, but man, that gap is still pretty close for me.
I can't put them in the Hall conversation yet. I think those names are a little too strong. They're not old. They're well-rounded. They're more physical. They're more gifted, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm with Kate that I would take him over Tracy. I think him and Brown is a conversation, but I would take Irving over Brown.
By the way, Brown is RB7 right now in Dynasty League football.
That's a little rich for me. And we could do this with every position and every player on this running back list. But I wonder, once we include the incoming rookies, is he now 15 or is he 12? Or, he might be peaking in a way. You know what I mean? But I also agree that Tampa will not be in the running back market.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast from Dane Brugler, who works at The Athletic. He said his scouting friends around the league expect double-digit running backs to be drafted inside the top 100. And I think you're right, Matt. Like, we might see Chase Brown at RB7 now and Bucky Irving at RB8. But once we get to May, those guys might be RB15, RB16, right? And maybe we get some free agent movement and some of these guys change teams and excitement goes up. So it feels aggressive now, but I wouldn't be surprised by the offseason if we're feeling like those guys are a major value in your dynasty leagues.
But, this almost sounds crazy to talk about, but would you trade Christian McCaffrey for Bucky Irving right now?
I would rather have Bucky Irving.
I think I would too, but, we know what McCaffrey's capable of. What's that, Kate?
I said I think I would too. It feels disgusting, but
right.
When you look at longevity, and again, we always talk about the running back position as a 1 or 2 year rental. Which player could I envision having more value just based on health concerns, potential for a high workload? I think if I'm the 49ers and I know that this offseason I just extended Christian McCaffrey, there's probably going to be a lot more incentive to manage his workload, because not only did he have bilateral Achilles tendonitis and both legs, he also had this season-ending knee injury. And at what point do you say, okay, maybe we do need to cut back on this workload? Maybe we do need to transition him to more of this, a slot receiver type of role that, almost a Deebo Samuel, if you will, plays a lot more receiver, but carries the ball, and they lean on somebody else for first and second down carries on a more consistent basis.
Brian Peacock thinks he's going to be next year's Deebo Samuel, who hosts Locked On Niners. And my co-host. He thinks that's Samuel will be gone. McCaffrey will get that role.
I feel so much smarter now that Matt. Peacock, one of our greats here on the Locked On Network. I know it feels kind of icky, but this is one of those things that, we always liken dynasty fantasy football to a stock market.
Yeah.
Buy low, sell high. And I do think that this is probably as low as you're going to be able to buy, because I don't see him surpassing a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Bijan. I don't think he's going to crack top 5, but
I definitely think he has a ceiling just based on talent.
Yeah,
for sure. He doesn't have the physical gifts of a Jahmyr, a Bijan, an Achane, but in terms of situation, in terms of production that we've seen so far, I can't.
Let me throw one other name at you. What about a James Cook? I know that Irving seems to be going ahead of Cook or it has a higher ADP right now, but if I could turn Irving into Cook in a second, now I'm happy with that.
Here's the weird thing. I like Cook better than Bucky Irving. I like Buffalo's offense better than Bucky Irving, or better than Tampa Bay's. But he just doesn't score touchdowns because Josh Allen gobbles them all up. And I really like Ray Davis, and it seems like he's becoming a bigger part of the offense every week. But I agree with you. If I can flip Bucky Irving for James Cook and X, I think I'm doing that. I think that's the smart way to go here.
It could be a short-lived comet, this Bucky Irving thing.
It could be,
yeah.
Although I think I'm with you though on I'm buying Tampa Bay's offense in general.
Yes.
I think the offensive line with the 2 tackles they have, Graham Barton, the center they drafted in round 1 this year, they're just going to have success. I am a little bit worried that Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, is going to get a head coaching job, and maybe we'll have a third coordinator there in 3 years. But it seems like this offense is just productive.
I'm thinking
No
that's
matter.
next off season.
I
It
hope
seems
you're
a little early to get one now.
And just in terms of James Cook, I do want to give him his flowers because, like, for a guy that doesn't score touchdowns right now, he ranks 3rd in the league in total touchdowns, 6th in the league. Like, I think we're looking at a guy who maybe doesn't feel like he has that ceiling, but 14 scrimmage touchdowns on a, for a guy that we're saying can't score touchdowns, it's pretty good. I think the difference between Bucky and James Cook in the long run is more about volatility. I think James Cook probably has a higher ceiling any given week, just based on his offense, based on the situation. But I think his floor is probably a little bit lower than that of Bucky Irving. So pick your poison.
Let's talk about Ladd McConkey, who is all the way up to wide receiver 12 on Dynasty League football. Would you rather have him or Jackson Smith-Njigba going forward? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This episode is brought to you by the College Football Playoffs presented by TNT. It's that time of year. The College Football Playoffs are back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever before, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoffs begins on December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into the first matchup, it is the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Crimson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoffs presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Let's talk about Ladd McConkey, who's all the way up to wide receiver 12. And Matt, if you look at his average draft position, it's 19.2, which is right next to Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is 19.5. Garrett Wilson is at 18. They're all really close to each other. Of those three receivers, Garrett Wilson, Ladd McConkey, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who do you want in your dynasty leagues?
I'll answer it in 1 second, but I want to start this by I love Ladd McConkey. I mean, I think he's a tremendous player. I own him in a lot of leagues. I scooped him up in a lot of my rookie drafts earlier than his ADP. I think he's in a wonderful situation. But
Sounds
there
like
is
coming.
Yes, there's competition coming. Yeah, I mean, there's no way he's going to battle Quentin Johnson and Will Dissly for targets next year. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's going to be T. Higgins, but somebody good is going to catch passes in the Chargers that's not in uniform right now. And I don't love that. Now, of the three you mentioned, it's still Garrett Wilson by a landslide for me. No. The other two is a conversation, but Wilson to me is a special talent. I don't care who his quarterback is. Even when he didn't have Rodgers last year, he was really, really good. I'm just going to, scout the talent on that one.
Kate, how do you feel about Ladd?
I love Ladd. Like Matt said,
I feel a butt's coming.
I like him a lot. I really do. And I mean, if you've been a longtime listener of this podcast, you know how high we were on Ladd McConkey, and we've been calling him a buy. But that was when his ADP was, wide receiver 40, and then it climbed up to wide receiver 30, and then slowly but surely we've made our way to the top 10. And I think it's too rich for, not just the reason, top 12, not just for the reasons that like you mentioned, Matt, but like, let's also consider health, which has been kind of a bumpy road for Ladd McConkey, even though he's producing this season. having a fantastic rookie season. I think the tape looks as good as the stats. I think everything looks great, but even as a rookie, health concerns have been a problem, and they were at Georgia. So like, I think going all in on a player that I think we can agree has a decently high ceiling with Justin Herbert as quarterback, like that's great, but this feels rich.
Yeah, I love Ladd. Loved him
But
coming out of Georgia. We all do. But it just feels expensive here. One of the reasons why I would move on from him, not move on for him from anything, but make sure you get good value, is that every time he catches the ball, Matt, I just wince a little bit because I'm always nervous that he's not going to get up after getting hit. He's had like several of those plays this year where he comes up and he's kind of squinting a little bit, and I don't love that. So if I can flip him for a Zay Flowers, who's being drafted at wide receiver 17, George Pickens, who's wide receiver 18. I mean, I guess I would do that if I had to. Like, I think that's probably the strategy, is like sell Ladd for one of those receivers and something else right now.
Let me throw out two other names. How about Rome or Marvin?
Well, I would trade Marvin straight up for McConkey, and I would give up stuff with Ladd to go get Marvin. For Rome, I would do it straight up.
You'd rather McConkey than Rome, or the
No,
other way
I'd
around?
rather have Rome than McConkey.
Okay, and you say you'd rather have Harrison?
I'd rather have Harrison. I'd be willing to give up something else with Ladd to go get Marvin Harrison.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm on the same page there, but I don't think they're all that far off.
Kate, what do you think?
I don't think they're all far off, but I do think that that's like a testament to how good this receiving class is. And yeah, I want every single one of those guys over Ladd. I just think, generally speaking, the ceiling's going to be a bit higher. I view each of these guys as guys that I think are going to be kind of that prototypical wide receiver one. I think Ladd's going to be a wide receiver one, in terms of how Justin Herbert views him, in terms of his maybe floor for production. But do I think he has the ceiling of a Rome Odunze? Absolutely not.
Do you think you could get a second-round pick with Olave or Ayuk for him right now?
Yes.
Some injured type? Yeah, I do too, and I'm be kind of interested in that.
Yeah, I think you can. I wanted to ask you about the other rookie receivers, because Malik Neighbors has climbed all the way up to wide receiver 3. He has an overall ADP of 3.5 right now. And then there's a big gap. Marvin Harrison Jr. down to 9.25. And then Brian Thomas down to 16.5, wide receiver 10. I know we've talked about this before, but it seems like the more games that we've watched, I just don't understand that gap between Malik Neighbors and the other two receivers.
I tend to agree, especially considering his situation at the moment is horrific. And do we know that the next coach is going to give him a 30% target share and all those things? It's just uncertainty and who's his quarterback. Like Neighbors versus CeeDee Lamb or St. Brown or Puka or Nico shouldn't be a huge gap to me. And no. I know this isn't what you asked, but I would take Thomas over Harrison.
Well, you know what? I've been thinking that as well. And I've even been thinking, I wonder how much draft capital has come into play when it comes to Brian Thomas versus Malik Neighbors, because I think they saw Malik Neighbors go at 6. Brian Thomas fell to pick, was it 24 or something, 26 or something like that? Yeah. And I think people are having a hard time coming to grips that maybe Brian Thomas is just going to be the better NFL player, the more productive player. It wouldn't be the first time, Matt, at least the last couple of years, where we've seen two teammates from LSU, right, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. They both be outstanding, but it was Jefferson who didn't produce as much at LSU that ended up becoming the better NFL receiver. We've seen it at Ohio State a couple different times now. I think if you really held me to it, I think I would take Brian Thomas. He just looks like the more special NFL player to me.
Over Harrison or over Neighbors?
Maybe both.
I don't think I can do it over Neighbors, but I would clearly do it over Harrison. I'm shocked I'm at that point. I just think he's a much better athlete than Harrison.
That's what it's come down to me. Like, you watch him on the field, he just moves differently than really any rookie receiver I've seen come out in a while.
I know we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill later, and I don't mean to make this comparison, but you know how Tyreek Hill my mom can watch TV and be like, wow, he moves different than everybody else. Thomas has a little bit of that. Like, whoa, he is really moving at a rare speed, especially for his size.
Well, and Brian Thomas has played with some bad quarterbacks this year, even when Trevor Lawrence is healthy. And he's at 988 yards and 8 touchdowns this year. It's pretty impressive as a rookie.
It is. Quarterback proof, yeah.
Yeah.
They both might be. They're both LSU guys.
Yeah, they might be. Kate, what do you think?
I mean, I think like Brian Thomas, my biggest kind of hang up, and again, if you kind of put the blindfold on and I hadn't evaluated these guys, coming out of LSU, I'd probably say Brian Thomas by a mile. You're right. He moves differently. He's 6'5". Like for that kind of length to move with the kind of speed and explosion that Brian Thomas Jr. plays with, it's unreal. And like, I know we said, obviously, Malik Neighbor's been the more productive guy, from throughout their time at LSU, but let's not forget that, Brian Thomas Jr. didn't accomplish nothing. He had 17 touchdowns, 17. He ranked second in the SEC in touchdowns at his final season at LSU. So he's not like some castaway either. So I think the difference for me just kind of comes down to like my pre-draft evaluation. This is going to be something that I'm going to have to continue to reconcile. I just wasn't sure that Brian Thomas had that element of like diversity in his game. Is he going to be a guy that just, runs go routes? Does he have the play strength to win, with his length? He's got a slighter frame. Is there going to be enough like diversity to his game? So far, so good. I think that the real answer here is that I want all of these wide receivers. Yep. And maybe the biggest takeaway of all is go trade for Marvin Harrison Jr., because I still don't think you can go and throw away a pre-draft evaluation this quickly. I mean, how bullish were we on Jackson Smith and Jigba, and how quickly we gave up on those takes. But I think we all agree that Marvin Harrison Jr. hasn't translated yet. I don't know that they've really figured out the best way to use him there in Arizona, but I still think that the talent is there. No?
Yeah. I wish he looked a little twitchier.
Yeah.
There. And he does look probably less twitchy than, I don't think like
these guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when you compare them, and then once you see Marvin Harrison Jr. out there next to, NFL DBs, yeah, that can look a little bit more striking maybe, but I'm still a believer that like, yeah, maybe he's not the twitchiest dude, but he's over 200 pounds. He's 6'5", and he still moves like somebody much better than much small. He moves like a much smaller dude, right? Like,
like I feel like his floor is Cortland Sutton.
Yeah,
and that doesn't sound great, but I mean that's a floor. He's
going to be much better. I feel like Michael Pittman, right? Like something like that. He's going to be much at worst. Yeah. Speaking of twitchy, let's talk about Tyreek Hill, who has seen his dynasty value plummet. We'll discuss him next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy, whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports. PrizePicks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away over $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out so you can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking for Saquon Barkley to finally get in the end zone. And actually, I'm going to predict that he's going to score more than 1 touchdown. It's quick, it's simple, and it's so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly after you play your first $5. PrizePicks, run your game. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about that maybe you didn't even know that you were paying? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I'm blaming on my wife that she had that we didn't even know that we were paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions and it monitors your spending and helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. Available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, real quick, let's talk about Tyreek Hill, who, Matt, is not a top 20 Dynasty receiver. He's not even a top 25 Dynasty receiver, according to the latest batch of ADP. Is that too low for Tyreek Hill?
Close. Like, I don't think he'd be in my top 20. Like, I would rather have McConkey. You know, I mean, we talked about earlier. I'd rather have Olave and Ayuk that I mentioned. I'd rather have McLaurin, but I don't think he's in the Debo Pittman neighborhood yet. You know, I mean, I think that's a little rough. I mean, how about a Jaden Reed or a DJ Moore?
Okay, Jaden
He is
Reed,
30 years old, you know?
Would you have Jaden Reed?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it. The Packers. I mean, we could do a whole show, a whole day dedicated to what in the world to make of the Packers. But like, I think from a perspective of like, if I'm in a 2-year window as a win now team, maybe I'm not trading for Tyreek Hill as a contender right now, but I also don't think that he's entirely washed. I think he's banged up. I think the wrist injuries probably hampered him a bit more than maybe we would generally believe. And I still think even Tyreek Hill at like 80% of his overall production is still better than most wide receivers in the National Football League.
Yeah.
Michelle and I talked about this on Monday's show. I know they've brought Jonnu Smith into the mix, but it feels like more of a Band-Aid for some of the other issues in the offense. Like, I still think they're going to find a way to get the ball back to Tyreek, Jalen Waddle when healthy.
Matt, let me ask you this. Do you think Tyreek Hill is on the Miami Dolphins in 2025?
75% chance. I think that they're going to try to run it back one more time and sort of blame the Tua injury. And let's try this one more year and see if it works. Maybe add a little more beef and a little more physicality, I would hope, but still have that speed model and, you know, try to first one to 40 wins.
All right, let me change it. If you are a Tyreek Hill dynasty manager, would you rather see him get traded to blank team or remain with the Dolphins? Because at least with the Dolphins, you know that he can be, you know, successful, that Mike McDaniel is going to throw the ball. Are you hoping that he gets traded, or do you want him to stay there?
I think I want him to stay there.
Okay.
I mean, I think he fits the Tua rhythm and the style of offense they play well still.
Kate?
Yeah, I think the best place for him is to stay exactly where he is. I think just the model of offense, I think there's some adjustments that Mike McDaniel needs to make. I think maybe, teams have caught on a little bit, and there's only so much that speed can get you if you're figuring out the schematics. I think they're going to make some off-season adjustments, but I do agree, Matt. Like, I think they're going to run it back. And I think generally speaking, when the offense is working as it should and Tyreek Hill is healthy, he's still the focal point of that offense. And
yeah,
it's an offense that they've kind of proven time and time again can work. And let's be honest, if Tyreek is healthy, like, he can just run faster than everybody else. Like, scheme doesn't even matter because he's literally a cheetah. I just think this is a great situation for him regardless, where he has a fairly safe floor, and the ceiling is demonstrably high.
I mean, he might not still be the most explosive player I've ever seen on tape, but he's still
He's still
more explosive than just
than-
about everyone else,
Yeah.
right? So it'd be different if he looked different. I mean, if his style of play changed to me,
I would also say I know there's a segment of dynasty managers hoping that he gets like traded back to the Chiefs or whatever. As somebody who's watched every Xavier Worthy target this year, I don't know if you necessarily want that. I wonder if Tua is the better fit for him right now at this point in his career. I just
pretty
think
good fit.
Yeah, it is a good fit, and they get him a lot of touches and they get him a lot of opportunities with the ball in his hands, moving. So I think I'm in agreement with you guys. I want to see Tyreek in Miami at least one more year before he goes elsewhere. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Check out the show wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. You can follow Kate at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.